Hello everybody, I'm Maya. I work on the Read It project at the OU alongside Shaf. Thanks so much Ella and Shaf. Both those elements were fascinating. Ella, I really love the idea of a reading nook. I love the idea of a family book club. I know people on Twitter are also saying that they really like that idea too. And this idea that you can kind of have a reading journey with those people that you love. I think it's a great idea. We're now moving into the final section of our event. If we could have the next slide, Eleanor, that'd be great. Here, we are going to be showcasing a number of the project resources. We're going to be exploring the contribution portal, the postcards and Chatbot. But more importantly and ultimately, we'd like to hear your thoughts on reading every day, as well as in the pandemic. And I know that you've already been kind of exploring some of those ideas in the chat, which I'm going to draw upon in a moment. And you'll also have the opportunity again to interact a little bit later in this section. But first, let's have a little look at some of the really exciting elements that you can get involved in through the project. If we could grab the next slide, what we're going to do first is have a look at our project postcards. So all the items, resources I'm going to show you are tools to help us as a project learn about your reading habits and experiences. That's what we really want to do, as Chef was saying earlier on as well. And one of them is our project Postcard Packs. You can see them on screen here. Are you able to pop me on screen, Eleanor? You come there. Our project Postcard Packs contain 5 postcards. Each one of them has a different question on them. And you will see on the postcard, you have your questions, and then you'll have a little space there to populate the postcards to tell us about your response to that question. You can get these packs from us, so these physical postcards, by writing to Shaf or myself, or giving me a call or Shaf a call. The details to do that will follow in an email. And what we'll do is we will send out the 5 postcards to you in one pack, and we'll send it to you with a stamped address envelope. So once you've populated them, you can just pop them in there and send them back to us so you can share some of those thoughts when you're reading with us. That's one way that you can get those back to us. The other way that you might like is also to return them to us digitally. So what you need to do is simply use our QR code, which is at the front there, or upload an image of the postcards to our URL, which is on the back of them there. The postcards are available in a range of languages, which is really exciting. So if you'd like to fill these English ones out in whatever language, in English, you're more than welcome to as well. But you might also like to receive the questions in Czech, Italian, French, German, or Dutch, and Dutch. You might like to get all of them. You're also more than welcome to pop a textual response on here, but we are also really interested in non-textual responses. So perhaps you might like to put a doodle or an image in response to the questions. We're kind of welcome any sort of response that you want to pop on there and send them back to us. And the last thing I'll say about these is you get 5 postcards in a pack. Please let us know if you'd like a pack, but also let us know if you'd like more than one pack. We'd be more than happy to send out larger numbers if you know people that would like to get involved with the project as well. Right, are we okay to move to the next slide? Because this is the bit where we get to try the postcards out. So on the next slide, we should be able to see 3 questions. So I've picked 3 questions that are on the postcards, also on our contribution portal, which we're going to explore in a moment. I'm going to ask Shaf to chip in here because I'd like to find out his responses to one of the questions and maybe a second one. And I'd also like to invite the audience to share some of their thoughts on the question. So perhaps we can start with the first question, Shaf. Let me read it out to you. During periods of lockdown during the COVID-19 pandemic, reading has often been a way of escaping the current situation. What have you read today? So, Shaf, would you like to, whilst our audience, so if audience members have any thoughts on this question, please pop them in the chat. I know that we've got some responses to that question already, which I'll talk about in a second. But Shaf, please let us know your thoughts whilst we get some responses from audience.
Sure, I've been quite Blue Peter, so I've been filling out my postcards because actually I found some of these questions quite difficult to answer quickly. So again, the nice thing about postcards is you can take your time responding to them. And so I have responded to this question, what have you read today? And it wasn't anything to do with the pandemic, I'm afraid. So I just finished reading Peter Ackroyd's biography of the Victorian novelist Wilkie Collins, and that's because I've been writing on Wilkie Collins. So it didn't really have any relation to the pandemic, but it's something I enjoyed reading. It's a short biography. It's really interesting, and something I could definitely recommend if you're interested in sort of 19th century novelists' lives. He had a very complicated life, and was a fantastic writer as well, incredibly productive. So in some senses, it didn't have anything to do with the pandemic. So perhaps that's an old habit rather than new world. I don't know. Sounds to me like an old habit. But, you know, again, feel free to put in your thoughts in response to any of these questions as they come up. We've got 5 different questions in the postcard pack. And sometimes it's quite nice to actually ask yourself those same questions over a space of time, because I know if I had to answer the "what have you read today" question for a week from now, it would be a different response.
Yeah, we're getting quite a few responses in the chat. I think everyone should be able to see the various responses, but we've got exhalation, we've got Anthony Brown's Voice in the Park.
We've got Romeo and Juliet.
Oh yes, that one's just come in.
And Dante.
And in the previous comments, we had people telling us about the sorts of reading they've been doing during the pandemic generally. So I think short stories was highlighted as quite a popular genre. Someone mentioned they quite liked the idea of being able to finish what they're reading in one sitting, which I thought was really interesting. Audiobooks was another one that was highlighted as a form of escapism. Someone mentioned about lockdown reading with children and kind of re-looking at some of their childhood classics, or generally children's readings classics, which I think is a really, really interesting point. And serials was another one that was highlighted. I wonder whether some people have been reading some of those things today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite a few comments on audiobooks, which is wonderful. And just to say again, of course, by reading in terms of these postcards, we mean all sorts of reading. So that's listening to an audiobook as well as reading a printed text or a digital text.
And as someone said, audiobooks take the misery out of the housework, which is always a plus. Okay, that's lovely. Thanks very much, Shaf, for your contribution there. Should we have a look at one of the other questions?
Yes, let's do that.
So on the screen, I've offered 2 further questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to choose out of the 2. I'll read them to you in a moment, just because I wanted to underline the fact that when you're offered questions on the chatbot, contribution portal, on the postcards, there is no, you may not choose to answer those questions. You may decide that actually you want to move on to another question. So you're more than able to discriminate between questions. So let me read out 2, and Shaf, you can choose between them and then respond to them. Audience members, you can respond to one of them or both. It's entirely up to you. So the 2 questions on the screen are: has the COVID-19 pandemic made you think about your reading? Why do you read? And the other question is, during the COVID-19 pandemic, many of us have turned to books for comfort, reassurance, or escape. What memory of reading would you like to share with us today? Shaf, do you have a preference between those 2?
I think I'm going to go for the second one, the memory of reading, to share with you all today. And it's a memory of reading from before the pandemic, but that's fine. I think, you know, it's nice to think about life before this. And the memory of reading I'm going to share with you is about a bit of holiday reading. It's one of those things, again, we've probably forgotten about this year, but certainly something that a lot of people used to do. And sticking to the island theme, it's actually Victoria Hislop's The Island, which many of you may well know, which I read in 2014 in Greece and in a summer holiday in Crete. I think I still have the sticker of the Greek bookshop I bought the copy from on the back. And I loved it. I thought it was great. It was set in Crete. I was in Crete. I was reading it on site. I visited the island where the novel is set, which is Spinalonga. It was Europe's last leper colony. And, you know, it was a functioning leper colony until the 1950s. And it was a lovely sort of summer holiday read. Some of us think about that sort of reading as being, I guess, not particularly intellectual or demanding, but actually in terms of the work that reading does, you know, making you engaged with the world, making you empathize, giving you a sense of a place and a culture and a history. I think that sort of summer holiday reading can often be incredibly rewarding. So I just thought I'd share that, because I think sometimes when people ask you these questions, you feel obliged to talk about big books by big authors and something very serious and weighty. And Victoria Hislop's, you know, it's described as a kind of summer holiday novel. It is a summer holiday novel, but it's also all of those things as well. It's also quite serious and deals with big issues, but perhaps with a lighter touch than many other writers. So that's the memory of reading I'd like to share.
It's not related to the pandemic, Shaf, but surely your choice to reread something like that invokes very happy memories of a time when you were allowed to travel. I mean, that's relative to the circumstances that we're all living in, surely.
It is all about quarantine as well, I'm afraid to say. So of course the lepers are quarantined because they can't come into contact with the rest of society, because otherwise they will infect them. So, you know, that's a kind of very strong element that runs right the way through the novel. And it's all about, you know, heart-rending family separation as well. So, I mean, I didn't really want to dwell on that because too many of us are suffering from that at the moment. But it is still I think it's a very positive and moving book, and absolutely worth reading. So even though it's a beach novel in some senses, it's quite a deep beach novel.
So we were getting some really nice contributions from our audience members. Nicola Darwood tells us about a memory of reading the entire series of Enid Blyton's Mallory Towers, and she's sitting on her grandmother's back doorstep while her grandmother gives her glasses of milk and platefuls of ginger biscuits. I mean, that's just beautiful, isn't it? It's incredible that those books go together with that beautiful memory of that experience with her grandmother. And there are a range of other really nice memories coming in. I wanted just to ask you, Ella, because I think this is a really nice question, actually. Do you have a response to this at all?
To which one? To
the question about memories of reading.
Yes, it is a good one, and there's lots that come to mind. But the one I was just pondering, maybe partly because Shaf made me think about it with Reading on an Island, was Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals, which I read as a child and absolutely loved, and it definitely formed my character to some extent, because I've always wanted to live on an island in Corfu with millions of animals and lots of children, and have done my best, but I don't quite live like that. However, when I went on honeymoon with my husband to Corfu, we both read My Family and Other Animals again, and it was just perfect reading it there on honeymoon. And so that's an amazingly happy memory of reading. And since then, my daughter's read it as well, and she absolutely loved it. And then, of course, we had the Durrells on TV too. So I'm a big fan of the Durrells generally.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ella. I'm really fascinated by lots of the comments we're getting in chat, but I think sadly we probably have to move on given the time frame we have. But please do get in touch with us with all the methods that we're offering to you to tell us more about your reading habits. And I should thank everybody actually, because some of your comments are very, very interesting. It's lovely to read them actually. Can we just grab the next slide? This is just me telling you a little bit about the contribution portal. This is a digital version of our postcards packs in some ways. If you log on to our contribution portal, the URL is on the screen, but we will be sending it to you. You will be offered up 5 different questions. They'll be randomly selected, and so you'll be faced with one of these postcard looking images where you'll have a question and then you'll be able to give us your answer to that question by clicking on the URL. You'll need to log on and make an account to answer the questions, and here you can also offer some images as well as, or indeed instead of text. I'm hoping you can see on screen what the contribution portal looks like. You're more than welcome to contribute here as many times as you like, so you might come back again and again to give us different responses to the same questions or to different questions. And the portal content is available in additional languages. So we have a toggle function now available on the portal. So you can find the questions in Czech, Italian, French, German, and Dutch. Can we grab the next slide? Because I just want to tell you a little bit about the chatbot. So this is a friendly method of engaging with a project and sharing your reading. You can see some images of what the chatbot looks like. To access our chatbot, you'll need the Telegram app. You'll have to download this and search for our bot. You can also use a QR code. All these details are going to be sent to you a bit later as well. And then all you need to do is simply say hello, and our chatbot will talk to you about your reading. It will ask you a question or two about your reading preferences, memories and experiences, and you can tell us through the chatbot about your reading. You can engage as many times as you like here, and we're also thinking of offering the chatbot in various languages, so do let us know if you're interested in that. Shaf, did you want to say anything further about the chatbot?
Just to say that it sort of randomly asks you questions. If you don't like a particular question, you can just type next and it will come up with another one. And if you don't feel like engaging at that point, you can just say stop and it will stop. And it will also provide you with some useful links to things that you might find interesting to read, basically around reading and well-being during the pandemic. So little short blog posts that are connected to it. Everything that we gather through the chatbot is entirely anonymous. So rest assured, no personal details are included. We don't need to know your name or where you're located or anything like that. So it's a completely anonymous data. So think of it like a confessional. You can say whatever you want because we will never be able to associate your response of reading with you as a person. So it's a very free space.
Lovely. And then can we just move to the next slide because there's one more thing, just one more thing to do before we thank you for joining us. I'd like to launch an exciting free podcast by Professor Josie Billington. So you can see details of that on the screen and they'll also be forwarded to you. This podcast is called Reading, Doing Its Work, Shared Literature Lifelines. It's by Professor Josie Billington. Josie is at the University of Liverpool at the Department of English. And in this 10-minute podcast, she explores mental health and well-being through shared reading during the COVID-19 pandemic. Please do follow that up at your leisure. If you enjoyed this session, that you will enjoy that podcast. It is an excellent resource. You'll also find on that link a transcript of the podcast. Next slide. And finally, I'd like to just thank the audience. You've been really active and you've given us a lot of food for thought in your engagement. I should also thank Eleanor Hardy at the IES, who's been behind the scenes doing all the technical wizardry and making all of this happen. So a big thanks to her. Ella, of course, thank you. Your talk was fantastic. And to Josie Billington for her podcast. We'd really like it if you stayed in touch with us. We have an active Twitter account. Those details are on the screen at EU Read It. Do join us, follow us, chat to us, come and talk to us on the contribution portal, the chatbot, send us a request for some postcards, and lots of information will be available on the email that we're sending round a bit later this evening, including an evaluation. We'd be really grateful if you could complete that. It helps us, and being human, make our events better and improve them for next year. So your feedback is always much welcome there. Shaf, would you like to add anything and close us off?
Just to say thank you all very much for coming. Please do contribute. I mean, I'm really enjoying reading the kind of responses in the chat box. They're absolutely wonderful. And you can continue this conversation with us. So we are here and available. So send us requests for postcards or contribute via the contribution portal. So do get in touch. We want to hear about your experiences of reading during the pandemic. Thank you very much for joining this event and making it such a success. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you also to the organisers of the Being Human Festival and the sponsors. So that's the School of Advanced Study, University of London, the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the British Academy. Thank you all again and good evening.